Welcome back to On Right Podcast. Here you have Elijah alongside Grant. We're going to do a deep dive into the Lions draft. That's the first four picks that they have, which is the second, 32nd, 34th, and 66th pick, respectively. We're going to give a handful of players that we think they should try to target that should be available at those picks. Kind of give a quick blob about each player and our opinion to go from there. And at the end, a couple draft sleepers that we might be able to clean up and make a real diamond in the rough.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you hit it right on the head. No, I was saying you hit it right on the head. I mean, really just kind of diving in. The real thing is gonna, about 8 days out from the actual draft. So thought it'd just be cool, it'd be fun to kind of talk through potential scenarios. Maybe trading like Taylor Decker, trying to get a couple picks, trading back, things along those lines. I think we're just going to, touch on where we're at currently and, just see what the picks, like how we can best utilize, how we think the Lions should best utilize the picks we're sitting at now currently. So, I think kind of start things off, I'll let you go ahead and take the lead on this, E. Second overall pick, to give me, 2 or 3 people that you like for them to get, they're targeting, and we'll kind of start from there.
Yeah, no. So right off rip, I would say I'm doing all this as if I was the GM and I was taking over effective immediately, I would trade that pick back. I think at that moment, there are definitely good, solid players in there. But I personally would trade that pick back, especially considering that Hutchinson is probably going to be off the board. My view is the best, hands down, best player in this draft. So I would start out by saying I would trade back. I would have personally tried to hype up a couple of those quarterbacks, at least put them in for interviews, make them seem like you're somewhat interested in that. And then I would try to flip that to get a couple more picks because we're currently at a place where more than likely one player is not going to be the deciding factor of whether we're, on a playoff hunt or not.
Yep.
If we can land 2 or 3 additional starters for that one pick, I think that's kind of the boat we need to be in. So I want to start out by saying that.
Yeah.
But let's say we're going with a player. If Hutchinson is available, we have to take him.
Yep.
I think that is. I pray that they mess that pick up and draft somebody else. That's the Jacksonville Jaguars. If they let him fall into our lap, I mean, he's born and raised in Michigan, went to the University of Michigan, got the first Big Ten title in 20 years or so. His dad is an former NFL player, great Big Ten player while he was there as well. So I think he has that pedigree. He's proven he's willing to put the work in and get better. So I think that is hands down the best pick. Outside of there, I don't really want to touch anybody else. If we absolutely had to, I guess I would prefer Thibodeau over Hamilton. But that's kind of what I'm going with. Thibodeau, as I really don't want him, but I could deal with that. Hamilton, I don't think we should take, and we shouldn't touch any of those quarterbacks.
Yeah, no, that's a good call. I mean, I agree with that. I do kind of feel like right now we're in a rock and a hard place. I know you and I talked quite a bit about, how that last win at the end of the year kind of put us in this spot now to where it's like, okay, obviously we can take the best available player, after whoever they decide to take at first overall. But, like, the best available player is also, I mean, you got a couple old linemen that are in the mix. You got Thibodeau that, we kind of heard him just kind of, pop it off of the mouth about a lot of different things, up to the draft. So it's like, it is really tough. I mean, I think to kind of take, what you said, if I was the GM, what I would probably do is either trade that pick, or depending on who Jacksonville gets, I'd probably be okay with them taking like an Evan Neal or Ike Ekwonu and trying to trade Decker.
Yep.
So it's like, okay, we got we got the best, one of the best tackles in the draft. Don't have to, worry about like the contract that Decker has. Like, and I think it'd be valuable if we were able to try to find a way to get off of his contract, kind of start fresh, just with like a new, pretty much retooled O-line overall. And kind of keep pushing from there. But like you said, if if Hutchinson, he does fall to us, I think that's like a no-brainer, especially for a team that was like last in sacks last year, last in total defense for the most part. I think they might have been like 25th in total defense to finish the season, but they were pretty bad, pretty much from top to bottom on the defensive side of the ball. I think they did a decent job of, shoring up the secondary, shoring up, got a couple linebackers that are coming in. But I think the biggest thing we need to address would be the D line. So, but other than that, I mean, I think, if Hutchinson's not available and, that's just a pick and what it is and who we're going to get, I mean, I think it'd be, I'd probably tip it out. I mean, I think I wouldn't be happy with it. It was one of them situations where it's like, we know we need somebody coming off that edge. We need somebody putting pressure on, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, Justin Fields, the whole rest of the NFL to give ourselves a fighting chance week in and week out. So I would say, Hutchinson, if he's there for sure. Neal or Iquanu, if they kind of plan on doing something with Decker, which I've heard a little bit here and there, or, Thibodeau, but I can't really, getting like Hamilton or anybody along those lines, maybe even Javon Walker. That might be somebody that could kind of, that might kind of surprise everybody. We could also take a peek at as well. But other than that, kind of between a rock and a hard place. And I do honestly hope they do trade that pick and trade back a little bit.
Yeah. No, I think that's the best thing we can do at this current moment. Like you said, Hutchinson is the difference maker.
Yep.
Evan Neal would be a difference maker. And some of these other guys just might be guys. Like
Yep.
there might be solid. I'm not going to say that Thibodeau won't be a good, maybe solid 7, 8, 10-year starter in the league. But is it worth valid of the second pick? Or, are you getting a guy that's going to be a franchise difference maker? That is really, if that's what it is. And if you can't get one guy to do that, then you need to flip that for 3 or 4 pretty good guys.
Yeah.
That's kind of so I think we're on the same page with that. I think if we can get off Decker, obviously he's good and still has gas in the tank left. But if we can get off him before that becomes an issue and slide in a great young tackle, I think that's a win-win. I think we keep that line fresh and we do right by him as far as not cutting him in 2 years after we wasted the rest of his career, or not cutting him where he loses money or whatever. Just kind of a win-win for both parties, all 3 parties if you consider the player getting drafted.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
With 32nd pick, I'm going to try to address the other a couple other needs that we have. Jordan Davis, if he's a big tackle from Georgia, if he's available there, I've seen him. It's kind of hard to tie down where. I think if a team falls in love with him, he could go before this. But it seems like it's definitely possible for him to still be available or in that mix around 32.
Yep.
I've literally seen anywhere from like 15 to like 45. So it's a big range for him. But I feel very confident that he could anchor your line, especially if you're going to go get a Hutchinson in that first round pick. I mean, you're looking phenomenal moving forward from there. Another person I have is Andrew Booth. That's a junior. That is a cornerback from Clemson.
Yep.
I think they've proven that they can put out good defensive players. They have a good solid program there, and they're constantly producing difference makers in the NFL. Pretty solid conference. He's about 6 foot. Looks like he can play the ball pretty well. Good speed. That's a guy. Those are the 2 picks that I have for 32nd pick.
Okay. Yeah, no, I like those. I mean, I think, just addressing, more of the things on defense. And it is interesting. I mean, I think that guy Davis, I mean, I feel like you said he's seen maybe from like 15 to 45. I mean, I feel like I saw him in, the top 10, a couple of different places here and there. And,
his weight scares people. Like 360 pounds. That, are you Albert Hainsworth? Or are you,
right.
I think that's kind of the fear in people.
Yeah, definitely going to be one of them guys where it's like, monitor what he's eating, just trying to keep him in shape as much as you can, because he's more like a 1 to 2 down lineman kind of guy. But you probably want him to be more of that 3 down lineman kind of guy, to where, he's actually out there and it's kind of tough just having somebody that gets gassed and, might always be available as much as you need him to be. So
you definitely don't want to catch his big ass on the field in a no huddle. Yeah.
Yeah, that's bad news. But the 32nd pick for me, I mean, I think even though we were able to grab a couple guys in free agency, and it's for the secondary, I still think it's good to grab a couple guys that can at least like put some pressure on them, vet guys, like splitting time. I think as a franchise, I don't think anybody except for like a certain few individuals have like their spot. You know what I'm saying? I think we're kind of in a situation where it's like, obviously we're rebuilding, but it's like we need to kind of create more competition within, like, on the team in order to, I think, maximize, like the team's potential overall. So, I mean, I have a couple guys I'm looking at in that, that side of things is Lewis Sine, the safety from Georgia. I looked him up a little bit. I think I've seen that he can play a little corner.
Yeah.
You're going to end up having a lot of packages where you got 5 DBs on the field. So it doesn't always hurt to have like your starting 4 and then like 1 or 2 or 3 guys that, can kind of rotate in and play the nickel, play in the slot, play safety here and there, or rover, wherever it kind of looks like for their defense. And I mean, that was a guy that like has made Michigan look, look like they were playing kindergarten. I mean, he just looked great against Michigan, looked great in the championship game, played in the SEC. Not really much to, you don't really have to make much of a case for him. Another guy I have is one of the hometown guys, Dax Hill. I mean, I've definitely seen his name come up quite a bit in that, like, 25, 29, like 30, 33, 34, 35 range as far as where he might be going. He was in Detroit's backyard. I mean, we watched him, definitely not scared to come hit people. I like him because he can cover tight ends like pretty well, and he can, they can match him up with a Kelsey or match him up with a Waller, and he can maybe like develop into that down the road to where he's just kind of like a, bigger, like in the box, more type safety, but he can also have some solid cover skills to be able to sit on them bigger receivers. If we, that's something I think we could definitely use and be valuable, especially in the league today. And then another guy is Khair Elam. He's, another cornerback, safety, DB from Florida, I should say. SEC guy, like I said, SEC guys, I mean, you don't really have to tell me a whole lot,
best competition every week.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
you wouldn't even, if you were bad, you wouldn't even been on the field. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, they're not.
Yep. What I like about all 3 of these safeties is just like, you're just bona fide, they'll come hit you in the face, they can cover, just very, aggressive, like individuals in the secondary. And I feel like that's what you need, especially in this league now where it's literally like a track meet. Like every game is a track meet. Is everybody 4 receiver sets, stop it if you can. So I think that's definitely something that they could address at that pick for sure.
100%. So the Lewis Shine, I had him for my 34th pick. So I think right there in that ball, I think he's good. I remember he stood out to me in that play in the college football playoff as well. And obviously playing Alabama the following week, it just stood out to me a lot. So I watched a little bit of his tape, maybe like a little 2-minute highlight tape today. And there's not a whole lot more you could want to see. So I definitely second that pick as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving forward, just with the 34th pick, I think, it's an interesting spot to be in, having those basically almost back-to-back picks. As long as the guy you fall in love with don't get snagged in between, you're doing pretty well. So I switched it up a little bit on this one. I have Sky Moore, which is a Western Michigan receiver.
Yeah.
I know we have to get more explosive on the offense. The first 2 picks, I went defense. So this would kind of be to open it up a little bit. Get a partner in crime for St. Brown, and just kind of. I watched his highlight tape today. I'm not going to act like I knew who he was a couple of weeks ago even, but I watched his highlight tape. He looks very good. He had 1,300 yards, 95 catches, 10 touchdowns. He just looked very solid. I looked at some of his stats for some of the Power 5 teams. He showed out in those games as well. So I kind of think, in particular, you always find a phenomenal receiver somewhere in that, like, this ballpark, and right off the first round, heading into, like that 30 to 60 is where you find a lot of them TOs, Tariq Hills, those type of guys that may didn't go to the biggest schools, maybe didn't have whatever, but they're available in those ranges. So I think that's where you get a phenomenal pick for where you're at. So that's one of the first guys I like. Definitely think you should look him up. I have, and then lastly, because I have the corner, my third one on this one will be Quay Walker from Georgia, another linebacker. I think if we were to do that, that is just shoring up that defense. Like you said, there's a track meet every week, getting versatile guys. If you have the worst offense in the world and the best defense, you're probably still going 8-8. So I think that's kind of the mindset I think we should have. It's just that you won't be to score on us, I guess. So those are the 3 players I kind of like at this this time. I definitely think this is where you could get a receiver, a value receiver, and be able to do something. And maybe have another special player on your hands like St. Brown.
Yep.
And he was probably taken there in that 30 to 60 range.
Yeah. Who do you think?
I said St. Brown was probably taken there in that 30 to 60 range last year.
Yeah, I think if I'm not, at least second, third, late second, early third, something like that. Yeah. No, those are good call on all of those. I mean, I'm pretty much in the same ballpark as you with that 34th pick. So for me, I like Nakobe Dean.
Yeah.
If he's there, I don't think he will be, but I think so my thought process is if a guy like him is there, I think we should definitely look at him. If he's not, then I feel like, we got to just kind of prepare this offense for that next individual at quarterback that's going to come in, next year, whatever that kind of looks like. So I went with either John Mechie or Christian Watson. John Mechie, I mean, I feel like, he probably would have been a first rounder. He tore his ACL back in December. ACLs don't really scare me anymore, how they used to, kind of scare, me or anybody else as far as just coming back from them. I mean, his teammate, James Williams, tore his in late January, and they're already saying he's going to be ready to go pretty much start of the season. He's probably still going to be a top 10 pick. So I feel like Mechie, he's one of those guys. He's kind of like your St. Brown in a sense, but I just like, that Bama pedigree, like a possession receiver, tough. I think it's just important for us to try to load up on as much talent for how cheap, in a cheap way. You know what I'm saying? I don't think I'm glad that we got DJ Shark and didn't pay him a whole bunch of money. I'm glad we don't have any receivers with these big, $25 million a year type deals. But with that being said, I feel like we do have to, try to grab a receiver early just because a lot of these other receivers are going to go top 15, top 25 just because a lot of these teams don't want to have to get in a situation where they feel like they need to pay a player a ton of money, a couple years from now. They'd rather have a kid on a rookie contract. And then my other guy I think will be a good pick here is Christian Watson. I was able to watch some film from him, in the Senior Bowl. He's a small school guy, North Dakota State. I mean, they got some players in the league. We know who they are. They definitely – I think they got the respect that they deserve for being, just one of those very quality 1AA type teams. 6'4", 210,
yeah, actually, he's on my list too, actually.
Yeah, great hands. I mean, can run. I just like them guys where it's you don't feel too bad about kind of taking a shot on a guy like this because a lot of these kids nowadays, I mean, they're playing in 7-on-7s from 8th, 9th grade on. I mean, I feel like it's it's kind of easy for them to they're like puzzle pieces at this point. Plug them in, they can catch 50, 60, 70 balls, 500-600 yards, 8-9 touchdowns, 3, 4, 5 touchdowns. That's a win. Is if you can get a guy to come in and kind of give you that type of production, especially at the 34th pick, in my opinion.
No, I agree. It's crazy. So I'm not. If you have another pick, I'm not gonna talk too much. But I have him on my list too. So he's another one of those players that I've seen in a very wide range.
Yep.
Of where. So he could be one of them guys that a team fall in love with and take, like you say, with the 34th pick. Or I could see him lingering around for a while.
Yeah.
Due to different things. So I do think that depends on if those receivers start flying off the board.
Right.
He'll clearly move up because out of need and desperation. But
if Drake goes 9 or Drake London goes 9, it's
the floodgates roll. Yeah. I agree. So no, it's funny you had him on there. So yeah, good deal. And were you down 34th?
Yeah, that was it. Just I
like those. I like those. So I think those Alabama receivers, like you said, I think that's as close to, plug and chug as you can. As far as I imagine. I mean, do any of them Alabama receivers not work out? So I just feel like they're. Yeah. It's not like the running backs where they kind of fizz out, I guess. But the receivers seem to be NFL ready. So every year, 4 of them are coming out.
Ridley, Judy. I mean, Julio kind of started it. Cooper. I mean, there's a couple guys peppered in there that was kind of maybe kind of late round that we're just not thinking of. But all,
like you said, it kicked off with Julio Jones back in 2010 or something. So yeah, I mean, every year they're very deep at that position. So yeah, no, I agree. And so moving forward, just the picks with the 66 pick. This will be the first pick I think where maybe possibly we don't get a starter out of this, or we shouldn't get a starter out of this, but like it's still going to be a solid contributing player, a guy that we see around that's on the team, making contributions.
Yeah.
So the guys I have on there, I actually have Christian Watson. I guess I'll start with him on there. If he's there, you have to take him. You have him moving up 30 spots sooner than that, so that kind of puts me hesitation on him even being available, I guess.
Yeah.
But I do think that guy. I think he's going to be very good. I haven't. If we don't get a safety, one of the earlier picks, I have a Tennessee safety. His name is Alontae Taylor. Like you said, another SEC kid. Kind of goes to a school that was more or less beat up, but I don't know if that's the worst thing in the world as far as he's obviously been put in bad situations. And sometimes I guess if you're used to that, then it might not be such a bad thing to come to the Lions. If you've been on Alabama and then you're going to the Lions, that's a culture shock.
Yeah.
Not to say that we don't need to draft players to change the culture, but I would say I'm not only going to run to the SEC schools that get 12 wins a year. I think there's very good talent throughout that league. He's having to stop players like the Alabama receivers every week. So his name is Alontae Taylor. I think he'll definitely be there around that ballpark. Another guy, and I already forgot his name. We talked about it before this, but his name is Daniel Falafe from I was going to butcher it either way. I forgot it halfway through. From Minnesota. I mean, I think if you're in the Big Ten, you know this man. I think he's the biggest tackle to probably ever play in the Big Ten. That does somewhat scare me a little bit, but he wasn't entirely abused. He's not overly slow. He's not, he was playing players like Hutchinson and Ajabo and whoever else might have been throughout the league over the last 4 years. So I think he's come to play. And if he's there, regardless if he's the biggest man in the world, I think he could be very solid, especially as like fourth round, somewhat project type player where, he might need to work on a couple of things, footwork or strength or whatever the case may be. But I think a couple of years from now, he could be on your line, help anchor that. That's the guy that I'm kind of interested in. And
I like that because, kind of going back to them potentially trading Decker. I mean, if this is somebody they potentially just love, you know what I'm saying? Whether they grab him maybe not early second, but it's like if it is coming day 2, day 3, and he's available, you're kind of like, all right. I mean, we can get off Decker for like a future second round pick, or maybe like another pick in this draft or 2 picks in this draft, something along those lines. I wouldn't be mad at it. I love the fact that we could do like that and then throw Sewell at left tackle, and then kind of just take the pressure off of this guy, because I'm pretty sure he played left tackle in Minnesota.
You did. So I just looked it up in the combine. He was 6'9", 379.
That's crazy.
So that's a behemoth. But I think in this type of range is where you would take a flyer on somebody like that.
Yep.
A flyer on a Christian Watson or somebody where you're going to roll the dice, high risk, high reward. You don't roll the dice earlier in the draft. This is when you try to do that. So
yep,
I agree.
Yeah. My 66 picks, or who I think they should, could target at 66. So I got this guy named Darian Beavers. So he played for Cincinnati, and they had like a top 5 defense. And I think for me, was kind of just looking at their team over this past season, and just I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm like rooting for them. It was more just like, can they get into the the Final Four? Like, can they kind of like keep the intensity up to find their way in there? And I mean, I'm just so impressed with what that defense did against Bama. To where I'm like, why would I not want 3-4 year starter, was on that type of defense, was able to play with one of the best teams in the country, pretty tough. He's more kind of like you can put a hand in the ground, you can stand up. I think just nowadays, the NFL, you kind of want multiple big, long, rangy type defenders that can maybe go in coverage for you a little bit, blitz, come off the edge, just play the run.
Yeah, you can't be a one-trick pony no more. You can't be
right.
One of my favorite players historically, Sean Lights Out Merriman. You can't do that. You can't be you pay me to go get the quarterback. You know what I mean? You get that. Those positions are kind of dying off. You have to be versatile, or they're gonna.
Yep.
The offenses are getting too good. They'll find a way to expose you.
Right.
Yeah. So I agree
Absolutely.
with that. And I was impressed with that team as well. The Cincinnati team. I mean, they beat most teams handily this year. Played Alabama tough. They got one of the best cornerbacks coming out of the draft. So I think they show that they're legit.
Yep.
So I wouldn't be too afraid of drafting some of those players. I almost threw their quarterback on the list.
Sure.
Yeah. So he almost made the cut, but not quite. But I say all that to say I wouldn't be shocked if he wasn't solid also.
Yeah. Only thing with Ritter is like, I mean, obviously he'd be younger than Goff, but like, and I could be totally wrong with like my evaluation of him. Like he reminds me of like a Mariota, and like, but then when I kind of like look at him, I'm just like, how much more better is he than Goff? You know what I'm saying? Like, what, like, and not like a knock on him. I just like you with Willis, you see like the incredible athleticism. You know what I'm saying? And just
no, I agree. Did you do the 66 yet?
Not yet. But I mean, it's cool.
No, so I didn't want to get off too far off the beaten path.
You're good.
No, so I agree with you on that. I guess I would say, I don't know. It's just, I don't. I'm not big on touching any of these quarterbacks.
Right.
I don't know. I guess if I had to bet on one, I bet you. I feel like I don't know why. I feel like Sam Howell's probably not Sam Howell.
Yeah.
Matt Corral is probably the best quarterback of the list.
I like both of those guys.
Yeah. So I think. Yeah, I don't know. If I had to say, I probably would put my money on Matt Corral being the most legit of all of these guys.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if any of these guys last year are even being talked about as first round picks.
Right.
And I think that's something you have to measure up as far as, are we moving them to the top because of the class they're in, or are they worthy of it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I agree with all that. I just feel like, as bad as we kind of want to just see a new guy under center, it's one of the things where it's like, I'm feeling okay with seeing Goff for, another year. And then it's like, let's look at maybe the Bryce Youngs and the CJ Strouds and any other.
They seem much more legit, especially if you build this lineup, you go get a Christian Watson, you go get a whoever, and then you bring in these quarterbacks, and then you got something. I agree with you.
Yep, and you never know, man. I mean, I feel like, I think one thing we always used to talk about was like trying to grab. I mean, it might be Tua's time I'd be up in Miami. You know what I'm saying? Like I wouldn't be too opposed to like getting a 1-year guy or something like that instead of taking, a shot on the quarterback overall. But I mean, that's just how I feel about drafts and overall. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go and jump back into my 66 pick and who I think they could kind of take a peek at. So another guy, the name is Nick Bonito. He went to OU. Playing in the Big 12. I mean, it's shootouts every week. I'd say that they probably mirror like what the NFL kind of looks like. They probably see what the NFL looks like more than like any other school, like in the country. I feel like the Pac-12 or the Big 12
image or NFL the most. Yeah.
Right. Yep. Just 4 or 5 wide. I mean, he's a edge guy, 4-year guy. Oklahoma always has like their defense is always kind of like above average, but always have one like stud that is just like, all right, like we're probably not gonna want really anybody else on that team, but we'll definitely take like this guy that's been raising the most havoc. And I watch a few games and always kind of see him in the mix, from a defensive standpoint. And then my other person that I would maybe just want to take a flyer on there would be David Bell. He's a receiver from Purdue.
Yeah.
He went nuts against MSU. Big Ten guy. I'm always gonna be big fan of Big Ten guys, root for Big Ten guys, and I just think like once again it's going back to like just getting that seat warm and just making that seat as comfortable as possible. For whoever is going to be that next quarterback, whether that's a rookie or just like a somebody that they trade for down the road. And I feel like you can. Whether St. Brown, him, Shark, like Chris Watson, 2 out of 3 of those gonna hit. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm confident that somebody, let's just get like some big bodies in there and just give like give Goff a fighting chance, or like give whoever new quarterback next year is, a fighting chance on offense, to where like give them like some actual bodies to throw to. So yeah, those are my 3 at that 66 pick. that I think would be, just good players to look at. So, yeah, I know we were going to talk a little bit about just a few sleepers, kind of wrap things up. So who do you think would be some players you kind of like them to, I wouldn't even say maybe even for the Lions, the people that you just think, what I'm saying?
I wouldn't say – I mean, I check my GM hat off. These are just guys that I think are going to be third, fourth, fifth round picks that are going to be I don't want stars, high producers in the NFL. In no particular order, I kind of just rattle them off. From Iowa State, his name is Charlie Kohler. He's a 6'6", 270-pound tight end.
Yep.
He had 62 catches, 750 yards, six touchdowns. I watched his highlight tape. For some reason, in both football or in basketball in particular, I tend to watch Iowa State a lot. They're a school that, for some reason, when they're on, I happen to throw them on. I happen always watch them play Texas. I watch them play whoever, Oklahoma. Those are teams that I happen to watch them a decent amount. Secondary, second pick in this one would be Kirby Joseph from Illinois. He's a safety. Watched him play a handful of times versus Michigan. Watched him play a handful of times just throughout. I think that's just a solid Big Ten safety.
Yeah.
Somebody I wouldn't be shocked if they're making a name for themselves in NFL. I had Christian Watson on here, and then we don't got to talk about him again. And then lastly, I had Hassan Haskins from Michigan.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I think, we know we've seen him probably damn near every carry he's had at Michigan. He's the truth. I think he's going to make a name for himself in the NFL. Whoever takes him, that's their starting running back in a couple of years. I'll be willing to bet.
Yeah. I'll start wherever you finish. I had Hassan Haskins. I felt a little disrespected. They had like the top 10 best running backs that they thought were in this draft, and he wasn't one of them. But then they even had the nerve to throw some guy from like BYU in front of him. And I just feel like he might. I would say you want to talk about like the top two performances in college football from the running back perspective. It's probably, unfortunately, Kenneth Walker going off for, whatever he did against Michigan. Mm-hmm. And then I would say it's after that, or along with that, it was Hassan Haskins beating, a rival for the first time in a long time, and also, scoring 5 touchdowns, 150, 180 yards. So that's somebody that I'm like you said, whoever decides to grab him, I guarantee you put him in on 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 4th and 1, 4th and 2. He's going to get you a first down. That's literally all he did, like, for Michigan, on top of just being like that bell cow, and really, really took over when Blake Corum went down. So that's definitely one of my sleepers. I feel like he'll be literally right in that 3, 4, 5th round range. Yep. So I'll take a shot on him and fall in love with him. My second sleeper, his name is Damon Clark. He went to LSU. He was our leading tackler. I'm a big, pretty big LSU fan. And they're known just like they're like, the Bamas and the Clemsons of the world. They're always be pumping out a whole bunch of talent. They got like, I think, one reason why that, a guy like him isn't even higher. He's a little undersized. And LSU wasn't really that great this year. Yep. But just a tackling machine. And I feel like,
he a backer, a linebacker?
Yeah, yep. So he just tackling machine. Can cover ground, very well. I don't, wasn't really crazy about what I read as far as like him in the past, covering the pass, but like I just, like you said, it's one of these guys you can just take a flyer on him. At worst, he'll be like one of them first, second down type guys that just stuffs the run. Probably develop him to be a little bit better in the pass. But yeah, and then my last guy, his name is Justin Ross. He was a receiver at Clemson.
Yeah,
so he was talked about being like top 15, top 20, before he came out, but he had a pretty bad like neck injury, and he was able to get cleared and got everything squared out, missed the full season. And like you said, this is one of them guys where it's like if it's 4th round, 5th round, you just want to take a stab. He played with Trevor Lawrence. He's played in a great program for 3 or 4 years. I wouldn't be whoever grab him, that might be a potential guy that could make a very quick and early impact. Big guy, one of the more like them jump ball, like red zone type frame. Yep. Individuals I think could make a little bit of a splash.
No, that's a good one. So I know of him very very well. He definitely stood out to me when I watched him play. And somebody like him, obviously a neck injury is scary. But on top of that, your production is going to go down when you lose a Trevor Lawrence. You know what I mean? Or and everybody else. They lost Travis Etienne, and I mean, you know, when all of that stuff happens, you're now the spotlight guy, and you coming off a major injury and all that. So I'm entirely imagine him to have a bounce back year and not. Shut up, Saint. Yeah, my bad. That was tripping.
Yeah, no, you're good. I was like, you had to say something eventually. I knew it. But yeah, no, I think with Ross, like I said, it's, you know, you definitely want to get all the medical information and really do your homework. And obviously, like, it's the game of football. Somebody get hit the wrong way, and you never know what could happen. But I feel like he was cleared in college to come back and play, you know, another season. You know, why not take a chance on him? And yeah, like I said, he definitely has the talent, and it was there because they was looking at him as being a first rounder at some point in time. So he might be able to get a former potential first rounder in the third or fourth round. You know, it could be a great steal for any franchise.
No, for sure. And I think we've named a lot of good players. I think most of the players we've named today are very good players, not players that won't miss or, you know, aren't going to be like, damn, why the hell we draft him? And I think this is the type of safer, guaranteed starters, guaranteed production players that you need to go as far as our early draft picks. And as far as these guys, same.
Yeah.
As far as these ones, I think it's worth the flyer. You know, I think you go safe early on, and then you try to roll the dice, swing for the, you know, throw the Hail Mary later on. And you can afford to do that if you're hitting with your safe picks early on. You can afford to roll the dice on a guy that could be OBJ or he could be out of the league in a year. You know, I think those are
it's
calculated risk that's worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to, like, you know, kind of see we're both on the same page as far as just like, it's like
growing up the
defense. You want to toy with offense. You probably should toy a little bit with, you know, the receivers, that 34th pick. And after that, it's kind of really just like, all right, best available, you know. And then we both kind of agree as well, just with that second pick. I'd like to, you know, maybe see that they could trade it. Kind of wish they would have already traded it. But, you know, this is also, you know, I've also heard this is one of them drafts where Jacksonville, you know, nobody really knows what anybody's doing. Jacksonville doesn't know what they're doing. No, so I'm just, you know, if we don't trade it, I'm just going to say a prayer that somehow Hutchinson doesn't end up getting drafted first overall. He lands with us. I think that's the best case scenario.
No, I agree with that. That's best case. If we're forced to pick Hutchinson, I wouldn't even, you know, I'd be overjoyed, actually. Yeah. Throwing the pitch out at the Tigers game, maybe that's writing on the wall there. Maybe they know something we don't know. You know, he wasn't down in Florida throwing a pitch at the Marlins game. So, yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, just a week away, less than, or a little 8 days away, and then we'll have we'll have new look Lions on our hands here.
Yeah, like I said, you know, it's fun in games to kind of play around with this, you know, pretty much from the end of the season up until now, and just gotta sit back and hope that they, you know, they don't get a tight end or something. Just do something out of, you know, just off the wall that they've done in the past. So
no, this is where you want to be a champion. You want to even let's start with playoffs. You want to make the playoffs. This is where it starts.
Win the division. Yeah, absolutely.
To the peoples?
Yeah, that's all I got. Go Lions. You know, hopefully we get some good news next week.
Yes, sir. Go Lions. We'll be back at you next week.